All right, we are on to our next panel. This is AI for Sustainability. My name is Brian Green. I'm the Director of Technology Ethics at the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics, and I also teach ethics to engineers in the engineering school here on campus. We have three wonderful panelists and hopefully another who will arrive soon. So I will do introductions and then turn it over to Yuhong to give her brief presentation. So first we have Maryam Khanbaghi, who is the Director of Power Systems and Sustainable Energy Program, Associate Professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering here at Santa Clara University. Prior to her academic career, she worked at Corning Incorporated, holding several positions in research, engineering, and manufacturing. She was awarded an NSF Career Award in 2023. Next, I'll introduce Yuhong Liu, who is an associate professor in Santa Clara University's Department of Computer Science and Engineering. Her research interests include responsible AI, trustworthy computing, and cybersecurity of emerging applications. She has published over 90 papers in journals and peer-reviewed conferences, serves as an IEEE Computer Society Distinguished Visitor, and is recipient of the IEEE Computer Society Technical and Conference Activity Board Rising Star Service Award for 2023. We also have Navid Shaghaghi, who is a lecturer and researcher in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. His research interests include artificial intelligence, technology for education, technology ethics, and sustainable energy. He currently manages 30 research projects and oversees over 150 research students and alumni in 2 of Santa Clara University's research labs, and in his fellowship roles with the Frugal Innovation Hub and the Healthcare Innovation and Design Lab. I'll introduce Rocio Lilen Segura, although hopefully she will arrive soon. So she is an assistant professor in the Department of Civil, Environmental, and Sustainable Engineering at Santa Clara University. Her research focuses on the resilience of critical infrastructure, particularly dams and levees, against extreme events and climate change. Her work also explores community resilience and climate justice, integrating built, natural, and social systems to address environmental challenges comprehensively. All right, I'll turn it over to Yuhong.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Brian, for this very nice introduction, and it's my great pleasure to attend this panel discussion, and I believe there will be very interesting discussions later on. So the reason why I'm the first speaker, I think it's because I prepared some slides. So hopefully that can help me, briefly introduce the whole big picture and give you some illustration. So a recent project that I'm working on is about the energy domain, especially the power grid. And we know recently the energy domain has been experiencing a transformation. And we see this diagram basically shows the traditional power grid. We have those big, giant power plants generating those power. And then through the transmission line, distribution line, all the way, it finally will reach our individual houses and for our energy supply. But recently, we have seen many, many challenges that the power grid is facing. For example, the climate change, we have those extreme weathers, the wildfires in California especially, and that actually caused a lot of challenges for the grid. For example, during power outage, right? How would we actually recover the power grid as soon as possible? And we recently visited a local community in Pescadero, and I've told the story that during one of the power outage, they were experiencing like over 10 days of power outage, which could be, life-threatening. So in those cases, how do we actually be more resilient against those extreme weather, and how can we recover the power as fast as possible? On the other hand, we are also talking about clean energy. So rather than just relying on those fossil fuel, which cause a lot of environmental issues, how can we fast promote the clean energy adoption, and also with the UN's net zero emission goal by 2050? We're not so far from that date, and where are we right now? We are still lagging behind. On the other hand, it's also about the economic factor. is not, well, the clean energy right now, many of the technologies are not as cheap as we would wish they could be. And still, for the individual houses or for the communities, how could they access the clean energy or the new technologies with affordable prices? That's also another challenge we are facing now. And then, well, of course, from utility perspective, from the power grid perspective, they're actually also integrating new technologies, also AI, try to help them doing better planning, better estimation and prediction. But there are a huge opportunities opening at the edge of the power grid. When I say the edge, that means, the distributed energy resources like rooftop solar panels, like EVs, like heat pumps, like batteries. Those are actually distributed and can be adopted by the local communities or by even individual houses or by SCU, for example. So we can see there's a big trend, and nowadays the generation power by those distributed energy resources is significantly increasing. And I've shown some statistics there. I will just not read all of them. But you can see there actually can be a lot of new scenarios. Energy supply can be generated by the edge of the grid. And also make it more economically if we are able to provide an energy market that opens to the new stakeholders. For example, they can be individual houses who has excessive energy generated and they want to sell it back to the power grid. Or it could be some virtual power plants who actually can aggregate the local energy generation sources and then coordinate the generation power to actually provide more resilient energy, and that can help us address a lot of the challenges we are facing right now. So, for example, during extreme weathers, those local energy generation may help the local communities recover much faster. And also because it allows more flexible trading, it can actually help us reduce the price much more. And with that being said, AI can play a significant role there. For example, how do we coordinate those distributed energy generations so that they can contribute to the power generation well without overburden the power grid, causing instability of the power grid and either damage to the power grid. So that's an interesting thing. And also because of those devices are behind the meter, so utilities, they cannot really see what's going on behind the meter, and they don't really have a good control over those devices. And then how can we actually have those two parties, the two sides, work together? So especially for the power grid, we need real-time control. And it's really fast responding. So how can we coordinate that? Using human manual control doesn't work. We have to rely on automatic technologies and also AI. So there's a great potential out there. And then a little bit about our current project. We have one NSF-funded global center, which try to utilize the research and the education capabilities from the global and facilitating the collaborations among international partners. Right now, we are partnering with Concordia University from Canada, and we are also establishing the collaboration with Ibero University from Mexico. And we are also trying to expand this partnership to cover more institutions global-wide, trying to work together and solve this global challenge altogether. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Working now? Okay, there we go. So I should have said that actually what Yuhong was describing there was part of the first question, which I was supposed to ask, which I will now ask to Navid and Maryam, which is, what are some ways in your work or more broadly that AI is currently being used to support sustainability and environmental protection and promote environmental justice? So either of you. Is your microphone on? Okay.
Is it on? Yes.
There we go.
Again, I was saying that everybody's sitting in the back, not in the front, like in my classroom. And that's the question. I guess we keep this in our brain and always sitting in the back. So my work is very similar actually to what Yuhong is doing, but from the different aspect. And then the funny part is that as of now, I don't use AI, because that's what the discussion I had with Irina is that as an electrical engineer who design power systems and electricity and the movement of electron, as some of you may know, the voltage and the current, we try to use mathematical models, which is based on first principle, the famous one that most of you may know, Kirchhoff law. But it's the same problem we are trying to solve. So what it is that with most environmental situation that we have, with the grid, aging grid, so which is similar as you're saying cost, because some of the transformers we have in the US are built in 1925. So you can say the reliability. So that's one of the reasons, like in Napa, we had fire, because one of these transformers can blow up and start a fire. And then we have natural disasters, correct, which is more and more happening than before. So if you look at the data in the last 5 years, the cost of natural disaster for the United States was about $75 billion per year. Now, we can focus on the money, but the part that is interesting also to focus on is the people's life. There are people who are dying. Like in Houston or in Texas in 2021, what happened, we have about 200 people who died because of fire and not having electricity. So electricity is something fundamental for the people's life. So what I was trying to do, and my research, the part that NSF awarded, is looking, actually redesigning the whole grid. Not the way it is, as Johan showed, is now we have all these renewable energies that we can maximize and optimize. So the question of optimization become in which technique are you used to optimize the system. Then this is the part that I think we are all, as researchers, we are trying to figure out which is going to work. So my idea is that I believe truly by redesigning and using fundamentals of physics, you have more guarantee. However, you can improve it and update it by adding AI on top of it. So they are not standing alone. Both of them should work together, in my opinion. One cannot fix it totally. You need to have both. And in order to have both together, as an instructor, our students, the future engineers, need to understand both of them. AI is not going to fix all the problems. We have to look at the fundamentals that they learn in engineering. So this is kind of the starting point I want to give.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me here. So I'm in the computer science and engineering department, and I don't use AI. I use machine learning. I use logical inferences. I use various different tools that are now suddenly being called collectively as AI. In a way, in today's society, I think AI has become a term where it's technology, it's AI, it'll sell, people are going to buy it, just put AI on there, So I do lots of research in lots of different areas. Mainly, I run a research lab called EPIC, Ethical, Pragmatic, and Intelligent Computing. And our real goal there is to develop humanitarian technology. And this falls in all kinds of different areas, from building websites to doing very complex machine learning models for image recognition or other kind of stuff. Or a hardware aspect where we do IoT. So one of the main areas that I work on is in IoT, and I can probably give an example that can really show this distinction that I want to make. So, for instance, let's just say an HVAC system, like one that's maybe running the one in this room right here. How can we operate this system? Well, we could have a switch, and it could be a person that can go and hit this switch. It's like, oh, it's too hot in here. Okay, well, we hit the switch, and now the air conditioning will come on. Well, we can go a further step here, right? We can automate this. We can make this be something that doesn't require a human being to go and press the switch. We can install sensors in the room that will allow us to discover, measure, if you may, what the temperature in the room is, and then make a presetting on there and say, well, okay, whenever the temperature reading falls below or above, turn on heater, cooler, etc. Is that AI? No. Right? That's just basically a simple decision that's being made based on input information coming from a sensor. It happens to be hardware. Well, okay, but we can go a step further here, right? We can fine-tune this a little bit more. Should it be that anytime the temperature falls below a certain level in this room, the heater should go on? Well, maybe not. What if people are all wearing very heavy jackets? Well, if we turn the heat on because the temperature says so, everybody's going to be suffocating in here. So, can we add a little pizzazz here, right? Can we add something that can allow us to make a better decision? Right. This is where, you bring in some other technology. Maybe, for instance, you say, okay, this particular room is a classroom where students are always using this, and we have installed these sensors in here for 3 years now. Okay, so can we now see what the data tells us in terms of the usage? Well, okay, every day on average we have this kind of temperature and we have this kind of need for the HVAC to come on or not. And so then we can do machine learning, basically saying, okay, based on the statistics, can we make an inference and say, all right, it seems like we should actually do this when the system determines that it's actually the time to turn this on, not just because a trigger has said, hey, temperature fell below this value. Instead, maybe, again, we can make this hypothetical, like maybe there's a camera that we install in the room that can observe and say, oh, are people really flustered in the room right now and it's getting sweat off their heads or something? Or are they very comfortable? If they're very comfortable, we don't need to do anything, right? Whereas if they're not comfortable, we can turn something on. Is that AI? Again, no, right? I mean, but Silicon Valley is going to tell you, yes, that's AI, right? We have if the company is selling you the HVAC, they're going to be like, we have an intelligent system that's going to be able to give you the best outcome for any kind of room that you have that needs HVAC. But it definitely has elements that we would put under the umbrella, right? It has machine learning, right? It's learning from historical data of what happens in this room over time to then make a decision, statistical decision, about, okay, what should we do this next time that these variables align in a certain way. So I like to call this all computational rationality rather than AI, because AI makes me think of, oh, we're really talking about general purpose artificial intelligence, or AGI, right? We're basically talking about a device that's going to drive you to work while making pancakes for you and having a deep conversation about today's news. And that's not what we have, right? We have expert systems. You have cars that can drive better than humans. Great. You have a toaster that can make toast better than you could do in a pan, maybe, right? So the point is that there's all these machinery and there is all of these different techniques, which are really the statistics and math that Maryam is talking about, that we've figured out how to automate. And we have different names for them and different usages for them. So we use them in many different ways, and you are using them in many different ways as well, ways in which you may or may not be recognizing. You might be using a certain app that helps you with something, or behind the scene there's an app that is helping you to know what the weather is because you just opened up the app and looked at it and you didn't actually do any computation or anything yourself. So I would think of it more in those terms. And when we talk about AI, I want us to really maybe focus on the fact that we're talking about these individual different tools that can help us with efficiency, can help us with sustainability, can help us with computations, rather than the general purpose AI buzzword.
All right, thank you. As you can see from the panel, there's I think what's really interesting here is, like, is this AI or is this not AI? Are we just having an automated system that makes decisions based on techniques that we've had around for decades, or is there something that really takes something to this next level that makes it artificial intelligence? And so I think this is a really interesting question. I'm just going to give one more example of what I find to be a fascinating use of AI for social benefit, which is that every day there are 2 companies that scan the entire world's surface land area with satellites, looking down, recording everything that changes about the world, like a new building has been constructed over here or some land has been cleared over here. And then the satellites record all this data, and they come beam it down to Earth. And there's vastly more data than any human being could ever look at. You couldn't have probably, I don't know how many people you'd need to look at this data, probably more people than there are that live in the entire world. So you have to have computers look at this data, figure out what the changes are, and then label them and tell a person, hey, look at this thing, something happened over here, that's interesting and different. And then you have to ask yourself, once again, is this AI? Or is it just computers monitoring things for you and then flagging things for humans to look at? But On the environmental side, you can see the clear opportunity for environmental benefit, which is that you can monitor deforestation almost in real time. You can monitor urban sprawl. You can monitor natural disasters destroying things. You can monitor all these sorts of things with this data, but you need to have computers that are doing it as an intermediary between the humans and the data. Otherwise, it's simply not a task that human beings can do. Now, we've been talking so far a bit about some of the drawbacks of AI, the fact that it uses a lot of energy, it uses a lot of water, and other resources. Let's transition kind of to that trade-off question. Can you talk a little bit about the costs and benefits? How do we make sure that the benefits of AI or automated systems, however we want to phrase it in this case, or other sorts of techniques that you're talking about, how can we maximize those benefits and try to avoid some of the cost side of things? Or is there some way that we can really improve this cost-benefit analysis to be more on the benefit side?
This might be controversial, but taxpayer oversight. Yeah, I'll elaborate a little bit. But what I mean is, we have corporations that, by definition, their goal is to raise money, to raise profit, right? So the previous panel did a really great job of talking about this and how these companies are potentially doing certain things that might be beneficial, but they're doing it because it affects the cost and they can save money by doing it. They're not doing it because they think, oh, I love the rainforest. No, they're just doing it because doing that gets them certain tax breaks and different opportunities for having technology that they can use. So that's really one part of this. But really, I think another aspect of this is that the usage of the technology, for lack of a better word, does need to be socialized. Right now, what we have is we have an inverse of this. We have the cost of these things being socialized, but their benefits being privatized. So we basically have a major company or government entity saying, oh, this technology is really fantastic. It can help us with these kind of efficiencies. So let's pour a lot of taxpayer money into this to develop this technology. But then when it comes to, well, who's going to benefit from this? Well, you can buy the data, or you can subscribe to this app, or you could pay $20 a month for a subscription to this AI model that's going to help you with your calculations, or you could, I don't know, in some way you have to then come up with the funds, the money to use something that has already been subsidized in some way by your taxes already. And if we don't address that, if we don't change that, I'm afraid we will be in the same situation we are with all other technology over the course of centuries, if you think about it, right? Who owns factories? Do we own factories? Or a small group of people own the factories and therefore the modes of production, right? This is old socialist, communist versus capitalist sort of argumentation about, the modes of production, right? I would argue perhaps we are now going into this new discussion where we're going to talk about the modes of automation. And it's really a question of who's going to own the modes of automation. Because the end goal here is to automate as much as we can so there's less things we have to do. So, well, either we can enjoy life more, we could go explore space because Star Trek is real, right? Or we can essentially produce art or do other things that make us human. Or really just then see what's next, right? And take us to the next level. But if we don't have that control collectively over this, then what's going to happen is we're going to get the same situation where, again, a few people will own all the modes of automation, just like they own the modes of production, and we're just going to be in the same cycle again.
Okay, so I agree with what Navid just mentioned. I've done just one step back, talking about the different type of limitations or concerns that we have right now about the AI technology. So making one example is the bias issue of AI. For example, when we trying to use AI technology or automatic technologies, we typically train those models through the training data. And right now, for the energy domain, for example, when we try to train the model with the majority's data, which is based on statistics probabilities, sometimes the underserved communities, their data is relatively less collected or less reflected in the training data. So once you have a biased training data, the model trained on top of that, guess what type of decision it will make? The decision will also be biased. That's one aspect. And also for human users, I think right now the general public, we still have a lot of concerns about like if we adopt those AI technologies, it's just like a black box to us, right? What type of decisions it will make, and will that decision really represent my own self-interest or not? And will the AI behave as expected or not? We do have the trust concerns about those AI models because it's black box, lack of explainability. So that's another concern. And also talking about AI and AI. So think about if individual houses, they can actually adopt AI technology for their energy consumption or production decision making. And when you have so many different houses, and each house may have different situations. Some of the houses are just using like a base load. Some of the houses have smart appliance for what their energy consumption can be adjusted. And you may have some houses equipped with a solar panel. You may have EVs, all different types of models, house models. But then when you decide to adopt AI models, you may also go for different vendors. For example, you may go to Google and use their AI models to help you optimize your energy consumption and production. And someone may go to Apple or other companies. And then for those AI models, when they need to compete in the market, what's the result would be? It's an open question. Even in the research field, it's hard to say because those different heterogeneous AI models, which will play a more dominant role, which one will work better, and how will they actually eventually collaborate together, or they just run into pure competition and then lead to damage to the grid? It's hard to say. So there are many challenges from the AI development point of view we have to pay attention to. And only when we were aware of those issues, then we can potentially develop some solutions to address it.
Thank you.
So as a general form, in order to solve a problem, there are three things we need to look at. Is pricing, policy, and technology. So I think both of you talk about pricing and policy, and I'm very focused on the technology side of it. So a little bit about myself. I implemented AI 30 years ago for Montreal Subway. And the reason we did that, the mathematical model that we had wasn't good enough. And the objective was to reduce the cost of consumption of the power. So I'm looking at it from the power perspective. And therefore, things has evolved a lot. And one of the reasons AI became so famous now because the computing technology is available and allows us to do what we want to do. That said, from the technology point of view, we need to combine it with what is already there, which is the laws of physics and fundamentals. Because standing alone, it cannot give us the solution that we want. However, this is a tool that we have, and we have to use it. And therefore, we need to learn the fundamentals of it. And our students need also to understand the difference between one and the other, and see how we can combine them together. So this is a tool that is very powerful, but you need to be able to use it. It's like having I use it as like a hammer, and everything looks like a nail. It's not like that. We need to understand where it can benefit us, where it cannot. And again, I'm talking only from technology perspective, not pricing and policy.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think of when balancing the costs and benefits of AI and other sorts of automated technologies are that there is this big cost associated with them, but there's also a huge benefit if they're actually used rightly. They can actually really help people and do things, once again, like I was mentioning with the satellite example, that was simply not humanly possible in the past. And so looking forward, what are some promising uses of AI that we should be thinking about? And also I want to encourage all of you to write your questions down, and please start sending those cards up this way so that we can take your questions in just a moment. But what are some promising developments or other uses of AI that you see on the way for helping sustainability, the environment, environmental justice?
You look at me. How much shall I start? So environmental justice is something that's very dear to me, and because we are at Santa Clara Jesuit University, it's we get lots of support on that too. And I think Yuhong mentioned it a little bit, is that if you look at when the power goes out, when there are blackouts, underrepresented community are the first one who gets the most affected. Like maybe I lose 2 hours, but in those areas, like San Jose, I have been told, this is anecdotal, but they lose power for 2 weeks. We started to do some research, and as you said, statistical analysis, so principal component analysis, which is basically known as machine learning. We got some data, and we were able to show that, in fact, this is not just anecdotal. In some area, when they lose power, when they're underrepresented, they lose power more longer than the affluent area. And it's not only about the money, it's just where you have universities, when you have police station, where you have fire station, and all those things, when you have hospitals. These are the places that they get power sooner. So from my perspective is, it's good to understand all of this and see, like, this collection of data was important. Because when you say it, nobody can believe it. It's just anecdotal. I have a friend who did that. But when you are able to use machine learning, the data that helps you, and again, some kind of clarification from my side, machine learning is a subsystem of AI. You need the data to analyze, and then AI helps you to control it. So it's a way to control it. But in order to get there, in order to know what to control and what to not control, you need to have the information, and machine learning is going to help us to get that information. So in regards to environmental justice, that was very helpful to us to find out, okay, what we think or what anecdotally we hear is real, is those areas. So then now we know where to go and how to work and how to can propose renewable energy that help to be cheaper and be able to be implemented easier in areas that they are underrepresented.
Sure. Yeah, so definitely I think the underrepresentedness part is very true, right? It's pretty endemic, maybe we should say, medical term, right? In that we don't even think about it, but it's happening all the time. And we see that when we watch the news and it goes, oh, this hurricane hit or this thing happened. And often the discussion doesn't go towards, okay, who the actual victims were. It's just a statistical number. Oh, this many people, this happened to. But then asking the question, who are those particular group of people that this happened to? And you would understand that it's mostly going to be the underrepresented groups, and usually it's a financial thing. It's like, the poorer you are, the more susceptible you are to climate change and all the other horrible things that happen. So in terms of the technology being used for this purpose, we can think of building technology that could try to address these things directly. That's one part of this. But there's also the bias and all the stuff that we've been talking about, where the technology that we have currently also needs to perhaps be modified in a way that allows for the better understanding of the environment rather than just garbage in, garbage out, or like, oh, well, this is some assumptions that are being made, and therefore here's the best course of action for that. So, for example, with the example that Brian brought up in terms of the images of the planet, it's very interesting because you see that same technology could be used in both directions. So, for instance, you might have a company looking at these images and doing a machine learning model on it to try to figure out, hey, there's a forest here. Can we find out how much or how many trees could we potentially extract from this forest so that the aerial images of this will show only like 0.005% change? Meaning, can we deforest but hide the deforestation? Right? But that same technology could also then be used on the other side around, right? On the good side of it, and go, well, can we study, for example, how much green spaces have been lost in the state of California over the history that we have, like whenever the first images from satellites of California exist till today, right? So, for example, I just mentioned that one because that's one thing I'm trying to do with some students. We're trying to collect these information and try to figure out how much open spaces has been lost. In fact, I think the current dean of arts and sciences, he wrote a book about this a long time ago, open spaces, about he had gone through all these information, but again, didn't have the machine learning, the AI technology, or satellite images. And he was basically talking about, oh, here's policies and different things that have happened that we've lost so much open space over the course of the year, or the course of the time from, I forget from like what decade to what decade he was looking at this. But for instance, now we have the tools to go back and say, okay, let's take a look at this and actually quantify this much more accurately and say, well, there's actually this amount of open spaces that has been lost over the course of, the past 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So that, I think, is where these tools really come in. They can help us with telling the story more convincingly, right? It's very easy for us to set up and get up and say, hey, there's this big problem. We got to do something about this. Well, but okay, where's the proof that this is a really big thing, right? Like Maryam was saying, all these people are saying, hey, the power goes out for us for a much longer time. Well, we need the numbers, we need the statistics, we need the information to be able to say, okay, there is a problem here that needs to be addressed. And of course, the people who are in power need to be challenged with that. That look, no, we have evidence. This is what's happening. And that is, I think, what these tools are really good at providing for us. I think that is probably the best use of these tools for the general public, is being able to use them to tell the story that they're trying to tell. They might know something, and they might have some data or might not have the data, and they want to understand the story of, wait a minute, what has happened here, or how is this going, or where is this going? And they can then go and find the information, right? We have search engines, but they won't know how to synthesize that information, right? They don't all have a degree in statistics. They don't know how to graph them. They don't know what all these terminology mean. But they could use an LLM that, well, again, I won't say it knows, but the LLM that can take these concepts, take these information, synthesize it, and give it to them for them to be able to then look at and try to get inferences off of. Again, of course, garbage in, garbage out, right? It's one of those things where it really depends on, well, I guess you should say, you have to know something to be able to understand something about something, right? So it really is important for these discussions to happen and for people to realize that they can use these tools. But to kind of steal from Benjamin from the earlier conversation, we don't have the killer app yet, right? There isn't that app that says, oh, this is the thing that we're going to do with machine learning that's going to make life better, right? We don't know what that particular one thing is. And honestly, it probably isn't going to be one thing, right? It's going to be the added improvements in the automation and therefore relief of individuals having to spend that much more time, money, effort to get to the answers to the questions that they're asking in all these different areas.
Yeah, so originally coming to this panel, I was thinking because a lot of conversations I was exposed to is always talking about the advantages of AI technology. That's why we start to warn people. There are some concerns as well for AI, but I don't want to deny the advantages bring by all those AI technologies. Take one example, talking about still the energy domain. There has been a lot of efforts trying to, ask people to actually react to the signals that utility actually send. For example, so-called the demand response mechanism. They are trying to, balance the generation and the demand so that we can always have a balance. When the demand side suddenly goes up, that will cause an issue for the power grid, and it may lead to instability. It may actually have the utility side, if they cannot have sufficient supply, they may have to launch another power plant, which will cause much more fossil fuel energy. So that in order to have this balance, typically that program was not successful because at individual houses, like how often do we actually pay attention to the pricing every 5 minutes? Are we as human beings, we don't have that much energy to pay attention to those prices changing up and down. It's even changing faster than the stock market. So how can we trace that? So it's not possible. But with AI technologies or with those automation systems, they're able to act on behalf of us, trying to react to those pricing signals more precisely, much faster, so that we can actually achieve this dynamic balance, and that will help us react more frequently and accurately to the grid signals, and that can help us for sure, and that is generally good for the environment. So that's one example. And also, when we talk about the buyer's data, it will lead to buyer's decision. But now at least we know that's a problem. So there's not like no solution at all. That just means when we collect the data, we have to pay attention to the fairness issue. We have to make sure that the minority or the underserved communities, their data is also taken into consideration. So there are some ways to, help addressing the problem. I don't say that technology nowadays, we address all the issues. That's not. There are still challenges, but there are directions we should follow. And there are also some strategies proposed by the state-of-the-art research. So don't be, I'm not too optimistic, but don't be too pessimistic, right? Yeah.
So what I think I've abstracted from the statements that you just gave is that there's an opportunity to use AI to make tractable problems that were previously intractable, whether it's problems of speed and things coming at you too fast to adjust, power demand and other sorts of things to match it, whether it's just the sheer quantity of data that you're trying to adjust to, whether it's dealing with bias or things that used to be merely anecdotes about, this neighborhood always gets its power back after that wealthy neighborhood, that we can actually get evidence now for these sorts of things that are happening. And then the problem has become tractable. We actually have the tools that we can apply to them to solve problems that were previously not solvable. I think that the question that then comes to mind is, are we actually going to do it, right? Who's going to do the work, right? Because it's one thing to recognize that there's a problem out there and there's lots of data. It's another thing to actually spend the work to actually solve the problem. So it sounds to me like it's going the next step that we need to start doing, and it's nice to know that the three of you are working on it, so thank you. We have a couple questions from the audience so far, one of which is specifically about the grid. Are there any sort of this person doesn't want an incremental improvement in the grid. They want a breakthrough technology for the grid. Is there anything that AI can do or other sorts of technologies associated with the power grid that are really something that we can look forward to as far as a breakthrough or making things just much more effective or efficient?
Okay. So there's lots of research going on. I think most of you have heard about it, about microgrids. So microgrids are these, and again, depend what we call a smaller grid that can be totally independent and be disconnected from any larger grid. So there's a lot going on in that area, and of course, there are lots of research going on using AI and machine learning, just collecting data. And this is the part that I'm saying is totally redesigning the grid, not the way it is, like you have a local or kind of a far away power plant and transmission, because every component that is in the system, the more component you have, the more danger that you will have a problem is going to be, correct? So you reduce those components, like you reduce the transmission line, you reduce the power plant, you reduce the kind of transformers, then you can have a more stable system. So from the technology point of view, there is this research that's going on. Microgrid, network of microgrid. An example for Santa Clara University, we are thinking about to make Santa Clara a microgrid, and therefore, in case there's a natural disaster, Santa Clara can help the neighborhood around us, the neighboring houses, provide power and energy to it. And we are hoping that it's going to be totally renewable energy. So this is some kind of a future research happening.
Other thoughts?
Yeah. So another thing is, I think for recently NSF has a like open call for AI ready testbed. So just for focusing on the AI itself. So one of the issues why people are hesitate to take or adopt AI technology is what are the potential consequences. Most of the AI researchers right now working on like a data collection, they collect the data, train it, and then use it, and hopefully it can be adopted. But that's not closing the loop yet. So we have to have those test bed that can, providing like a potential control capabilities for the AI models. Because if the AI model directly be deployed on power grid, once the decision is wrong or there's some other factors that was not considered in the decision system, then the potential consequence is huge. It may lead to a big area like outage or cost millions or hundreds of millions dollars loss. So that is significant, and even like life loss as well. So I think building this test bed, which is realistic test bed, so that it allows real-time communications between the system and the AI models, and also giving the AI models control capabilities, then validate its safety, its fairness, its trustworthiness, all those aspects. If we have done those solid validation, and then we are closer to the step like where all those real world systems can adopt AI. So that's one comment.
All right.
Yeah, and so I guess
go ahead.
just saying for the question that was asked about what they think a problem that they could solve for the grid. Again, I'm not an expert in the grid. My colleagues know way more about it than me. But one area that I think has always been a problem in the grid that hasn't been solved, and I'm not saying that AI is going to solve that, but hey, this is a project for the person who asked the question, is that grid level storage has always been a problem, being able to store the energy. And that's a major problem for renewables, right? Because renewables are not continuous, like people said before me, right? The sun isn't shining at night, so the solar panels aren't actually doing anything for you at night. However, if we had the ability to store the immense amount of energy that we could get in the daytime, so imagine if you had more solar panels producing more energy than we could use, but storing them, then at nighttime you could be using that stored energy. Is there a solution that includes AI? I don't know, but that could potentially be one area that this could be used to try to find a solution similar to that. And just one last thing really to say about that is it also definitely comes down to the money on this, right? So I think the excitement that we see about microgrids or really being disconnected from the grid is often coming because of the fact that companies like PG&E or etc. Are constantly raising prices, or they're making it more difficult for you to have a connection in a certain area, or fire because of their old technology transformers that are blowing up and causing your house to completely vaporize. So as a result of that, I think all of this attention towards, hey, let's go towards a microgrid, hey, let's go towards being disconnected from the grid completely is, I think, very economically driven. There's all kinds of amazing usages for it. For instance, the grid cannot be drawn to certain areas. It's so expensive to take the grid and transmission lines and get it there. That's a good use. But if I live in the middle of a big city, why am I wanting to be separate from the rest of the city? Well, because I don't want to pay PG&E a connection fee. That literally just means I'm connected to their grid. I mean, it doesn't have any other purpose, right? Or the discussions of NEM, right? The net metering, where they changed the rules, right? So now we're in NEM 3, where basically before, if you had solar panels, and if you've locked in your solar panels already, you're fine, right, for the next 10, 20 years. When you were selling energy back to the grid during the day when you're at work and your solar panels are producing energy, they were giving you, not that they actually give you the money, but they were putting into your account a more amount of money per kilowatt hour than they are now. With NEM 3, it basically is like maybe 5 cents or something. It's so small that it really affected the what happened with solar adoption. Like, you can see literally solar adoption dropping. If you look at a graph of it in the past year, after NEM 3 went into effect, people go, well, the cost-benefit analysis doesn't show that I should buy a solar panel anymore. But now everybody wants to have a battery system because that still, is something that they can store the energy and then use it later and not have to pay the higher price. And there's no rules on that yet. So as a result of that, I think it's really an economic question at the end of the day. Yeah.
All right, I have two questions here that are similar to each other. One of them is, how can we truly transform the energy infrastructure without transforming the mix of energy sources? And the other question to go along with it, is there some way to use AI to optimize solutions from fossil fuels, energy production from fossil fuels? And the context for that is that the person is skeptical that we're going to be able to shift the energy system over to renewables fast enough. So can you say something about the energy mix and potential for fossil fuels to be made more efficient?
I'm just thinking how to answer this question. I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, I'll talk about that second question for a second. I feel like it might be a little bit of what we call greenwashing, right? In terms of like, oh, we're going to use this great technology and the fossil fuels will be less harmful. It's like, but they're still harmful, right? You all remember the election cycles before where there was discussion of clean coal. What's clean coal? There is no such thing. I'm sorry. There is no such technology. It does not exist. It was all really a hypothetical discussion of like, oh, well, there's going to be technology. It's going to be clean. Like, okay, we have to first make the technology. Then we could use what was mostly just political, right? It was just like, oh, there's this, we could make it clean. Oh, okay, but nobody really defined what that even means. So as a result of that, I think that any discussion for energy usage that says, hey, how can we utilize fossil fuels better is already going in the wrong direction. Now, you say this and then it alienates a lot of people because they're like, well, we can't get off fossil fuel yet, this, that, the other. No, we can. Again, it's about the profit margin, right? Why is it that we are allowing oil companies have billions of dollars of net profit per quarter, meaning 3 months of a year, then we start going, well, why can't we get off of fossil fuel? I don't know, man. It's a hard problem, So yeah, so that I think is a major thing. We need to have the control again back in the hands of, well, not the government necessarily, but the people who the government should be serving rather than the let's say, oil companies. And I'll just give one example of how certain other technology has been utilized in order to, or has been, kind of posited as a way of really not solving the problem. And maybe AI could, fall in this trap too. For example, the British Petroleum, they had a program with UC Berkeley and University of, Urbana-Champaign, and University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And it was a program about doing sustainability, and they gave this huge amount of money, and they brought together, they made the Energy Biosciences Institute, the EBI, and they were basically showing, oh, this is what we can do. Well, immediately the faculty and students at UC Berkeley protested this, and for a very long time protested it, and of course it was all squashed. But some of the questions that the faculty were asking were very important and weren't being answered. Like, oh, okay, well, some of the things that are in this proposal of what's going to be researched here is the creation of certain bacteria that are going to be doing certain things. Now, that certain things aren't important. But has anybody studied the effects of releasing such a thing in the environment? What's going to happen then later on? Or are we going to just talk about the net profit margins? And so when the EBI got put together, and I was a student there, and I was one of the people protesting, one of we got these pillars of the EBI, and one of them, quite literally, was the generation of a bacteria that can help melt semi-porous rocks, so that then the oil that is contained inside these rocks can easily just flow to the top, and we can skim it off the ground. You all know what that's called: tar sands. You see, they didn't use the word tar sands, right? It's like this long, but that's basically it. So you have a private institution coming and giving money to two public universities, which are being heavily subsidized by taxpayer money in order to, turn the lights on, they built buildings and keep the staff on, and etc. In order to do R&D for a private company, where, as we know, maybe only 10 to 20% of any R&D in any research lab is useful. The rest of it is. And we figured out that this doesn't work. And so they were having the ability to patent whatever 10, 20% of the stuff that came out of the EBI. But the bigger part of this was that this technology derailed the entire discussion of sustainability, because now, instead of researching alternatives to fossil fuels and, hey, how should we do grids and make sustainable energy from solar panels, we're talking about, well, how can we get more oil at a cheaper price or at a less intensive CO2 level, so that then we can actually continue to use fossil fuels. Whereas really the discussion should be, let's use AI or whatever technology to get away from that and really go down the path that we want to go.
All right. Irina, have we reached the end? We have run out of time. Unfortunately, we have run out of time.
What a happy note to leave on, right?
But I would want to say thank you very much to our panelists.
Thank you.